Check. Can any of the panelists on Zoom hear us? Oh, I thought I saw, it says 7 participants, 8. Are they all attendees?
Sorry, I'm trying to redo it. Okay, I'm back on.
Audio check. Nick, is this coming out of your test? 1, 2, test.
Not muted.
Test. Because that'll come through, but
Sounds coming through the mics.
Nick M, test. Can you hear this?
Recording in progress.
Check. Audio check. Nick M, can you hear this audio? Just the laptop though? Yeah, the other one is the one that's recording. Audio test. Check.
That works.
Yay. Great. Thank you all. We will get started momentarily.
All right. Thanks for your patience. We are ready to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, either in person or on Zoom, and for participating in this very important process. This is an environmental public scoping meeting for the city's Coastal Land Use Plan and General Plan Update Project. There are no speaker slips, but everyone will get a chance to speak, to give comments or ask questions. And before we get started, I'm going to explain who we are, why we're here, and we'll provide a quick presentation on the project. So, forgot to grab the mouse.
Recording in progress.
All right. It's okay. So my name is Mindy Fogg, and I'm a planner here with the city's Community Development Department. With me from the city is our Community Development Director, Nick Bobroff, and our long-range planner, Megan Musoff. And also helping us conduct this meeting and gather your input is Taylor Lane, our consultant from WSP. And on the Zoom, taking notes is Nick Meisinger with WSP. A big part of what we do in the Community Development Department is update our long-range plans and policies for the city, which will guide future development. In that process, we prepare environmental analysis and gather public input before updates are presented to decision makers. So this general plan update has been in process for years, and many of you have already been part of that process, shaping the elements that have been drafted. And as most of you know, we are not the decision makers who will approve the plans. Our job is to draft the plans with public input and then prepare impartial environmental analysis with the help of our consultants. And tonight is the first step in preparing a program environmental impact report, or PEIR, for this project. So the primary purpose of this meeting is to hear from you before we draft that PEIR. In particular, we would like to hear about environmental concerns that we should evaluate. So after our presentation, we'll call on people to speak. And if you have a time constraint and just a quick comment that's under a minute, you'll be able to speak first. As always, please be courteous and respectful throughout the meeting. Whether you agree or disagree with a speaker, please show respect and allow them to speak freely without interruption. Please also refrain from any cheering or applauding. And if you do provide comments, please direct them to us up here and not to others in the audience. This meeting is being recorded, so if you miss any of it, it will be available on our city YouTube channel and via a link on our General Plan Update project page. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Taylor, who's going to give the main presentation.
Thank you, Mindy. To walk us through the agenda for tonight, we'll be covering the purpose of this scoping meeting. We will provide an overview of the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan Update, which is the topic of the project, and the PEIR. We will go over the CEQA environmental review process and proposed scope of that PEIR. And finally, we'll take public comment at the very end and review next steps for public involvement as well as for the PEIR moving forward. So as Mindy kind of covered for us already, the purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the proposed project, which many of you are familiar with, continue the scoping process under the EIR that was initiated with publication of the Notice of Preparation earlier this month, request input on the scope of the PEIR regarding the scope of the environmental impacts analysis, resources, mitigation strategies, and alternatives, as well as to inform the community, you all, about opportunities to stay involved through this process. So to provide us a very quick overview of the project, the City of Carpinteria is proposing a comprehensive update to the 2003 General Plan Coastal Land Use Plan to maintain compliance with California Coastal Act and California General Planning Guidance, to reflect current community goals and priorities, to integrate sea level rise adaptation planning considerations and current hazard mitigation planning, ensure consistency with the city's certified housing element that was published last year, address new state laws enacted since preparation of the 2003 General Plan Coastal Land Use Plan, and modernize the document for accessibility and readability. The proposed Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan update will include updates to the following existing elements, part of the 2003 General Plan, to address mandatory and optional elements as well as part of requirements for state law. These include land use element, the community design element, circulation element, open space and conservation element, safety element, noise element, and the public facilities and services element. The update will also include 2 new elements, the coastal resiliency element and the healthy communities element. The coastal resiliency element addresses coastal hazards and the projected effects of sea level rise on the city, while the healthy communities element addresses health-related topics such as nutrition, food access, medical and healthcare services, and transportation and air quality. Also important to note, the housing element update is not being updated as part of this process. As we mentioned, that was certified and updated last year, so it will not be the subject of this EIR. One major component of the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan update is a brand new land use designations map. This indicates the intended uses of the parcels of the land and depicts the organization and design of the city that will support changes in economic conditions and community development over the long planning term horizon. Each land use designation is subject to policies and standards included throughout all of the elements for the designations, including limits on allowed density and intensity. Included with the notice of preparation were the preliminary list, of project objectives to be included in the PEIR. These objectives were informed by the goals, policies, and objectives of the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan update process. We won't go into the details of specifically what those objectives say, as they are included in the notice of preparation. But to provide a brief overview, they include preserving the city's small beach town character and economic vitality, community-wide design principles, the city's multimodal transportation systems, protection of natural resources and open spaces, minimizing risks and hazards, providing services, facilities, and utilities, promoting active living and healthy lifestyles, accommodating growth, and balancing community and stakeholder interests. Again, the detailed preliminary objectives are presented in the notice of preparation, but as part of this scoping process, the city does welcome any comments and feedback on those preliminary objectives that can be reflected as part of the PEIR when it does get published. So to lead us into a very quick overview of the CEQA process, there are a few basic purposes of CEQA and preparation of an EIR. Based on the project's scale, scope, and potential for environmental impacts, the city determined that a PEIR would be prepared. The PEIR offers the highest level environmental review under CEQA and addresses the project's physical effects on the natural and built environment. The draft PEIR will provide detailed analysis of and disclose the project's potential environmental impacts to inform the city decision-making process and foster public involvement. The EIR addresses ways to avoid or significantly reduce those impacts as needed mitigation measures. The EIR also evaluates alternatives to the project that would avoid significant impacts that are identified. So the purpose of the scoping meeting that we're here conducting tonight. CEQA requires that a scoping meeting be held for projects of statewide, regional, and area-wide significance, such as the general plan update. The purpose of the scoping process is threefold. It serves to inform public agencies, stakeholders, and interested members about the EIR process, including the key issues that will be analyzed and about future opportunities for public participation. It helps solicit public comment and input on the scope of the PEIR, including key community environmental concerns, potential alternatives, mitigation measures that should be considered in the analysis. And lastly, it ensures that early public and agency input is addressed in the EIR's environmental impact analysis. The city is the lead agency for preparing and approving the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan Update PEIR. It is the city's responsibility as such to engage with key participants through the CEQA process. Key participants in the scoping process include responsible agencies, trustee agencies, cooperating agencies, community members, organizations, and environmental constituents that are all important components and elements of the CEQA process. As required in CEQA, the PEIR includes several steps and stages, including the scoping process currently underway, to gather input from the public on key environmental issues to address in the EIR. We're about halfway through the 30-day comment period that closes on Friday, June 5th. Later this year, the city will release the draft PEIR for public review for a minimum 60-day comment period. After receiving comments on the draft PEIR itself, the city will respond to those comments and release the final EIR that will be presented to city decision makers for consideration and approval. The final EIR and the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan update itself are anticipated to reach decision maker hearings next year. So what is a program EIR versus a project EIR? Some of you might be familiar with. Well, to address the impacts of the proposed project, the city will be preparing a PEIR, as we discussed. A PEIR is appropriate when analyzing the impacts resulting from implementation of a series of actions, such as the approval and implementation of plans, policies, and regulations, such as the broad city general plan. Program EIRs are appropriate where proposed action does not involve immediate approval of any site-specific development proposals, no entitlements. While the Coastal Land Use Plan General Plan update involves changes to some land use designations, approval of the Coastal Land Use Plan does not authorize any new construction or redevelopment of any sites. Future development proposals of any sites identified in the land use map must still conduct site-specific analysis as appropriate. The program EIR allows for future streamlining analysis of projects that are consistent with the general plan policies, zoning, and land use designations. And lastly, the program EIR allows for contemplation of broad policy alternatives and program-wide mitigation measures to apply to future development throughout the city. For alternatives, this might include modified land use plan or consideration of alternative policies that might have been discussed through the general plan update process. And for mitigation, this can include broad mitigation strategies, such as the addition of new policies imposing requirements on future development, such as increased setbacks or requirements for site-specific resource surveys as part of the development process. The EIR will analyze a number of topics. If you have any concerns with any of these topics or thoughts, this is where we welcome community comment and feedback. We want to make sure that we're covering everything that is of concern and could be potentially impacted through implementation of the general plan update. But the specific resources that will be analyzed in the program EIR include a pretty long list: aesthetics and visual resources, agricultural resources, air quality, biological resources, cultural and traditional tribal cultural resources, energy and energy resources and supplies, geology and soils, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, including coastal hazards and sea level rise, land use and planning, noise, population and housing, public services, issues of recreation and recreation access, transportation, utilities and service systems like municipal water, wastewater, and wildfire hazards. Other topics or effects which are not found to be significant will also be summarized in the EIR, but to a lesser degree. Some of those issue areas would include topics such as forest resources or mineral resources, which do not exist in the city. The program EIR will also address a few other considerations. These include the combined effect of multiple projects, which might be minor individually but significant collectively. This is referred to through the CEQA process as cumulative project impacts. Some potential examples can help visualize what that might mean is analysis of a project's impacts on municipal water supplies. If an individual project would be adequately served by municipal water supplies, that does not mean necessarily that municipal water supplies exist to serve cumulative other pending development in addition to that proposed project. So that's a consideration for the EIR as well. It also includes growth inducements, such as increases or potential for increases in jobs, resident population through the future as well, and irreversible environmental changes associated with that, as well as I mentioned, the effects not found to be significant, such as forestry and mineral resources. And lastly, one of the most important elements of an EIR is the analysis of project objectives. Important that the EIR will focus mostly on objectives that attain the basic objectives of the project that we walked through earlier, while also reducing or avoiding impacts identified for the project. And I'll pass it back to Minnie to walk us through public comments and next steps.
Excellent, thank you. So yes, we're going to move into the public comment portion. And while we welcome your comments and questions tonight, we also strongly encourage you to provide written comments by 5 p.m. on Friday, June 5th, and to send them to the email address shown here. It's also on our website. You can mail them to us at our City Hall address. And as Taylor, oh, did I just go backwards? Let's go forward. There we go. As Taylor showed on the process overview slide, there will still be more opportunities for input as we move through the steps, including during the draft PEIR comment period and during an ERC public meeting, and finally at the Planning Commission and City Council hearings. If you would like to receive email updates at each of these points in the process, please sign up for our email notices on our website. And then finally, we have a few tips as you get ready to give verbal comments and questions. Please try to zero in on environmental issues such as air quality or noise and any potentially significant impacts related to those issues. And please let us know if you have ideas for mitigation measures or strategies or alternatives that could reduce impacts. And something that came up a lot during our general plan update workshops, for instance, is the Chevron decommissioning project site here on the Bluffs. And so if you have ideas for what you think the future land use of that property should be, that would be a great example of where you think alternatives could be considered. And I think we're on the last slide here. Please be aware that the program EIR will be evaluating the future build out of the city, but not individual projects, and it won't cover the housing element. And so now we'll get to our public commenters, and we'll start with anybody that just wants to give a real quick comment of like a minute or less, or a very quick question. If you have a time constraint, raise your hand and we'll call you up. I don't see anyone with a real quick, oh yes, come on up. Is the mic on at the podium?
Hello?
I think you need to push that
Push the
button.
button.
Yeah.
Oh, push right where it says push.
Oh,
I just have a quick question. When the question would be, is there any suggestions to reduce impacts based off of the current land use, or like what's in some, reduce impacts off of what standard baseline? That's my only question.
thank you. I'll just go ahead and try to tackle that question right away. So one way to look at it would be maybe a different land use, which you think would be less impactive and could be considered in an alternative. Another way would be maybe another policy that you think we should consider as we look at development going forward. Maybe a policy that is more sensitive to coastal resources or noise, loud noise generation. So you'll see we've tried to cover those things to the best of our ability, but we're always welcome more ideas because we can't capture everything. And you guys probably know more than I do about what is happening in the community and what would be sensitive to reduce impacts. Please do.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, we are focusing on impacts caused by implementation of the general plan. A great way to envision this is if the updated land use plan proposes a new zoning designation, or a zoning designation that includes higher or greater densities than what is currently allowed, and what that increased development potential could result over existing environmental baseline and assumptions for development of that site under the existing zoning designation. For instance, there are sites that get rezoned from commercial, I think, to industrial, or vice versa. So the analysis would focus on what that change could look like and whether or not that exacerbates any kind of environmental impacts associated with the development of and operation of those sites.
Mindy, do you want to see if anyone on Zoom has a brief question or comment? Go ahead and raise your hand now. All right, I'm not seeing any raised hands for brief question or comment.
All right, we'll move on to maybe a 2-minute comment. If you think you have 2 minutes or less, raise your hand and we'll call you up. Yes, Amrita, come on up. That's fine.
I had sent in a few comments this morning, but I've added a few more, so I'll just read them. Thank you for the opportunity to learn more about the CLUP general plan at this meeting. As I reviewed the first few sections before tonight's meeting, I recognize that we, city staff and residents, must work together to preserve the essential character of our small beach town and its open rural surroundings. To me, the CLUP general plan can be implemented when each project is reviewed based on the community goal, specifically assessing each project in relationship to the elements, in particular the land use element and other municipal codes. Only with the strict adherence to the CLUP GP and other city codes will we be able to preserve our essential character of being a small beach town and its open rural surroundings. It is the responsibility not only of city staff but of residents to support the implementation of the CLUP general plan without exception in regard to density, height, design guidelines, and compatibility to the neighborhood. It's my hope that the EIR will address these issues and allow for implementation of the general plan that is being adopted and encourage a collaborative approach between the city and its residents. Maybe staff reports in the future could show the pros and cons or pluses and minuses of projects in relationship to the CLUP general plan and municipal codes. Under the healthy community element, which has been discussed at some of the earlier meetings, they speak on page 241 of mental health is another critical factor influencing overall health. Well, the statement is fine, but there are absolutely no connections between what the city would do to make sure that resources were known or available to residents. How are you going to deal with various things, whether it's, rape or suicide prevention or, childhood schizophrenia or whatever. So I think it's important that there be some specific suggestions as to how you're going to coordinate with your partners on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience here in person want to do a quick 2 minutes or less? Come on up.
Well, I have a vision and hearing problem, so if you could put your mics closer to your mouth, maybe. I mean, I don't know if you can even hear me. So. Okay. I live in the beach neighborhood. I am very concerned about.
You should direct her because she's not.
Ma'am, can you pull the mic any
Lower your
closer?
microphone.
Lower the mic a little bit closer.
I think it's odd that my back is to people that might want to hear it better too. But, okay. I am concerned about the proposed Surfliner Inn, the repositioning of the parking, the chopping down of the huge trees that surround that area. I think all of those things are going to ruin our small beach town neighborhood. I've been here since 1948, and I know I don't have a lot of power, and I'm not running for any city council or anything, but it makes me unhappy that the city seems to be wanting to be more like Los Angeles than paradise.
Comment. Anyone else in person wanting to give a 2-minute? Susan, did you want to do next?
Thank you. I'm Susan Mayhew. I hadn't planned to speak, but that last speaker really made me realize one of the many things I have commented in the past and in past general plan updates is that we are allowing far too much deforestation. And now every single time I drive on the freeway, which I know you have no control over, there are more trees gone. And I really hope that our city will do everything we can. I'm a member of the Tree Advisory Board, and I keep saying that over and over and over. We need policies to encourage people to keep the mature trees they have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience for a quick? Yes, Sean, come on up.
This is just a question sort of general ignorance. I'm not clear on the whole breadth and depth of this plan. Therefore, I wasn't sure what kind of level of question and discussion was going on, whether it was something as specific as a particular set of trees on a single street or a more general policy review. Is this general plan available at the library? Or I know you've had other plan printed out available. Do you have any of these plans available in the library?
We do not have the latest printout at the library. We can do that, though, so that's a great idea. We can get that to the library next week.
Beautiful. The
Yeah.
last time you did it was great, but the problem with it, just logistically, was there's so much printed matter in those rings. You can't even navigate the pages, so if you could maybe do it with smaller number of pages or larger rings, it would be much more legible, readable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just note that the digital versions of the latest plan is on our website, but that's a great point that we should have a printout available, so thank you. Should we go to the Zoom and see if anybody has a 2-minute comment or question, and then I'll come back to the in-person audience again.
If you're on Zoom and you have a question or comment about 2 minutes or so, go ahead and raise your hand now. All right, we've got one hand up for Barry. Barry, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barry Remis, and I'm with Move Santa Barbara County, and we educate, advocate, and empower for those who walk, bike, and take public transit. So we just wanted to highlight the multimodal and elevate the multimodal component of the CLUP and the general plan for the update. Just wanted to connect that to the importance of also the new element for the healthy communities, because as more developments come into play, both here and in the future, the ability for more community members, especially those most vulnerable and don't have access to cars or choose not to drive, have the ability to easily connect safely throughout the community with either walking or biking or other wheeled devices or ADA, et cetera. Obviously helps to reduce carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, reducing vehicle miles traveled, and really helps to promote a more healthy and a vibrant community. So we just want to be able to highlight and emphasize the importance of multimodal development in the general plan as it's developed. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak, comments or questions in the 2-minute mark. Megan, no others?
Not seeing any other raised hands.
All right, we'll come back to the audience. And who would like to go next? You don't have to limit yourself to 2 minutes. We'll go to the 3 to 5 minute range. Yes, come on up, Mike. Thank you.
never fear, I'll be submitting a letter on behalf of CVA with detailed comments, so I won't be speaking as fast as I normally do, trying to squeeze them in right now. Kind of a general question that when I'm done, I hope you can respond to, and that is, in the document, obviously there's the objectives and the policies, and there's a lot of text, a lot of preamble, a lot of introduction. And I want to understand if that text outside the objectives and policy is binding in any way, or if it's just context. Meaning, is it just sort of explaining the policies, or is it worth us commenting on the scoping, saying that some of those things need to be analyzed in the EIR? So that's kind of the general question there. And kind of a similar question, the maps, like the figure LU2, the land use designation, is obviously critical. It's not in a policy, and it's kind of part of that text. It's what the whole thing's about. So I'm trying to understand what's real and what's just sort of fluff, for lack of a better word. And is that land use designation map high resolution enough to be unambiguous? I think it all kind of makes sense. You can figure out what street's what. They're not all labeled, but you have to compare it to a real map. Is there a supplement that goes with that that has higher resolution detail? And then, again, kind of a separate point, kind of, again, a question. Section talking about the urban-rural boundary and sphere of influence. I was wondering if it's planned for the EIR to study any alternatives on those. And obviously, I know we can make a comment saying we think it should, but we're kind of curious what the thinking is at this point before comments come in. Specifically, on the sphere of influence, it would seem that maybe having the EIR analyze alternative spheres of influence that include areas outside the city limit that the county is reasonably likely going to try to rezone and shove high-density development in the next RENA cycle. If we have an EIR documenting why those are terrible ideas and showing the less impactful situation is what we have now, that might be worthwhile to actually, even though we're not planning on changing anything, having EIR analysis that's finalized that shows that changing it has huge environmental impacts. Because the county's EIR is not going to do that on the next go-around, just like it didn't do it on this go-around. So that's what I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. I will try to answer and clarify some of those things, because I do think if we do that as we go along, it can help with people's comments and questions. Regarding all of the text that leads up to the policies and objectives, it truly is meant to be context, but it's never too late to tell us if you think that there's something in there that should be reflected in the policies and it's not, or if you think there's something in there that is inaccurate or not clearly context, then we would welcome that input. And I'll let you clarify also, Taylor, if you think of anything that I don't cover. Regarding the land use map, you're absolutely right. In our minds, the land use map is what we're really analyzing in terms of under CEQA, the future potential impacts to the environment. So under CEQA, what you have to analyze is what could physically change that could result in impacts. And so for us, the best way to visualize that is on that land use map, knowing there's going to be certain development commercial, there's going to be certain residential, there's going to be this density, there's going to be the possibility of multifamily, or there's going to be open space. And so all of the things on that map are really essentially what we're analyzing, but we're also analyzing it knowing that there's all these policies in the elements that will give further direction to that development. So that's the way we look at it. And so, yes, I think that you're correct that maybe a higher resolution GIS map that you can zoom in and out of, we can do that, and that would probably be helpful to go with the EIR. So that's a great comment. And I'll also note on the urban-rural boundary and sphere of influence, if we did analyze more area than what we're showing on our land use map, the issue there, it's not that we couldn't do it, but the issue is that no matter really how you look at it, that would probably be more impactful rather than less impactful. And in CEQA, you're supposed to analyze reduced alternatives that would be less impactful. But you've given us some food for thought there. We do think if there is going to be a need to consider those areas, if they were ever to become part of the city, that might have to be a separate CEQA action. But anything to add there, Taylor, from what I've said?
No, I think really, really well put, Mindy. Just to kind of circle back on the first question about the preamble to all of the policies and the objectives. A lot of that is going to be a part of the EIR, as the EIR resource sections will be analyzing and characterizing the existing environmental baseline for the city, which is partially informed by much of that context. But also, depending on the element, certain portions of that preamble are elements of the project themselves. The best example I can point to is in the circulation element. There's a list of planned public facility improvements as part of this general plan that the city's been planning for a while. That will be part of the consideration of project impacts as applicable, right? So much of that is not going to go ignored through the EIR. It'll be incorporated in one way or another, either through existing policy or regulation that informs the scope of the analysis, as well as the thresholds for the environmental impacts, as well as that existing environmental baseline by which we compare project impacts to.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Or wait, we should get through everybody first, and then I'll call you back up. Anybody who hasn't spoken, Susan, you want to come up?
I'm going to apologize ahead of time for my kind of random comments here, but if I could just ask, because some of us have gray hair, the light blue and white is really pretty, but it's very difficult to read, particularly this font is fine, but as it gets smaller, I'm sorry, we can't read that. So, anyway. So, and I'm so glad there's no timer here. In the past, we've always looked at the general plan as our guiding light, and for lack of better words, and please don't get angry at me, our city Bible. It's, we look to that. Anytime a project comes up, you go to the general plan and see how it all fits. So I think we need to continue looking at it that way. And again, these are just kind of general comments. Active lifestyle. And I think it's important for all of us to understand it's not just people in Carpinteria that enjoy the variety of activities we offer and how important that is to people coming from other places. I do Seal Watch, and I can tell you how many visitors are from out of Carpinteria and come here because we offer so much. We could offer more, which is probably going to be most of my comments. I think it's very important for us to look at our natural resources, analyze them, and protect them. And I guess the only word out of my, no, it won't be the only word, I promise you. Seals. Believe it or not, our harbor seals are an extremely important part of Carpinteria. They've been here longer than we have, much longer. We have that documented. And there doesn't, we have a group of volunteers that get out there for a short period of time, but that seems to be kind of the end of how they're being protected. And right now we're looking at Chevron decommissioning and what might happen out there, and the Tea Time property. And it scares me, especially when you hear a developer say, oh, this project isn't going to affect the seals. I'm sorry. It really is. And I don't think the general plan is analyzing what incredible natural resources we have. Okay, not just the seals, but to, consider that. Visual, extremely important. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Tank 861 is down and the views are incredible. Who knew? And I think we need to be always looking at that. I'll go to Tea Time. That project has no protection of views. They're just planting some Orange County thing down in Carpinteria and thinking it's okay. As far as ag, we need to get the county to respect the importance of ag, not just in Carpinteria, but surrounding. And this is maybe not a hot topic, but I spend time in Canada. It is up there, is cultural reconciliation. And we can't undo the houses in my neighborhood. And I think we need to realize that, not us, but people in the past have come forward and done a lot of damage to someone's home, someone's burial grounds. And we need to move forward and at least offers something up, and that's happening a lot in Canada. Water, I don't know how we can keep building. I know what the state says, we got to keep building, and we got to keep up with those RENA numbers, but if we don't have the natural resources, if we don't have infrastructure, this is ridiculous. And then I worry about things that have skipped by in the old general plan. Has anybody been out to the old planned member services building when that outdoor, whatever it is in the corner goes on? I mean, the noise is incredible. How did that happen? The next building up, I don't know what we're calling that anymore, that was supposed to have non-reflective glass. That didn't happen. I mean, and this was all in the planning process and just got lost. And then I think my biggest worry is Chevron. Through the years, and just because I'm out there a lot, I've seen a lot of unpermitted activities. And now that we're going forward with doing something out there, is how can you figure out what has happened there that's been unpermitted and make sure that the public doesn't, if you say we're going to put housing out there and, suddenly you find that there's things, gone wrong, that you didn't know that they were doing this unpermitted activity. How are we going to protect the community from that? I guess I only expected 2 or 3 trees to come down in that south east corner, and all of a sudden there were a whole lot, and heaven forbid, there's lots of PCBs out there. And I know it can't be cleaned up, but I worry about wells. It's not just oil wells. There's a lot of things out there, and I worry that we're going to say, put housing out there, some developer is going to come in, and then all of the houses are going to have to be in 2 square inches because there's a lot of problems out there. I could tell you about a lot of those problems, but I've gone way over my allotted or unallotted time. So, I'm really worried about the Chevron property. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, come on up.
I'm going to focus my comments on the aesthetics and visual resources section of this report. As you know, I did send in an email, multiple emails last year about historic overlay for downtown area, about architectural styles, and I couldn't find it in this draft here. I flipped through the community design section, and I see mention in the beach area about the craftsmen and bungalows and how they make such a statement for the small beach town community, but I didn't see it actually in the downtown and Old Town area, and I wanted to find out, maybe it's somewhere else in the report and I missed it, but I didn't see a historic overlay being included in this plan.
To answer that question, I don't recall either, but we would welcome that input, and that could be something we add as an alternative.
You don't recall it?
I don't recall what
My
we.
comments?
No, I remember your email. I don't remember how,
In here?
if we, I think we said that the GPUC, which is the General Plan Update Committee, they did not direct us to add it. So it's not currently added, but we welcome that as part of your comments during the scoping period.
Okay, and then I will piggyback on a previous comment about the lack of clarity on what is actually the document and what is miscellaneous preamble or pretext or context or whatever kind of text you want to call it, because it is a little bit confusing to try and see what are people supposed to be looking at and what really are you saying. So I would recommend taking everything that is not actual policy and making it a separate document so people can go, okay, here's all our preamble, blah, 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 blah. Now here's how we want to implement that actual policy. And these are the actual policies. These are the meat and potatoes of this document. I think commingling the two just seems to make it more difficult than it needs to be. It could be a simpler, more straightforward kind of document, which I know is difficult to do sometimes, but, you know, I'm looking at multiple columns and pictures and the whole bit like everybody else going, okay, where exactly are we here? Anyway, that was I just wanted to just focus on that one item because I think the historical overlay. Well, I have a question then. So you're saying that that committee did not recommend the historical overlay for this document, for this plan, correct?
Correct.
Were they informed of my comments?
Didn't you submit them during the General Plan Update Committee? I recall that you brought it up.
I thought they were in there somewhere, but I don't know if they ever got passed along to anybody. Okay, I'll take that as no. Thank you very much.
Alan, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to comment on this amazing document, work in progress, in the environmental impact side of it. I'm going to piggyback off of a couple of things about what's binding in some of the preamble and some broad policy public statements I'm going to make here. I got through the introduction, land use, and the circulation. So a couple points here. Knowing that the plan, the general plan, is our guiding light, I'm just taken back a little bit here about this next 20 years versus where we were. I'm going to take that in residential units. I went back to the last one that was published in April 2003, 5,468 units. In the land use section, we have an estimated net potential development and growth of residential units to 9,647. So that's 4,017. We know 901 is in our housing element, but that's drastic growth that this general plan is supporting. Okay, so a lot of the growth in the sense of where it's going to be in the dump road PUD area, over in the industrial R&D area. That's like 2,600 units there, versus the last 20 years, basically flat. Now, a lot of this is mandated, state mandated, in the sense of the housing element. So, that's just one factoid I'm putting out here, in the sense of contemplating any kind of policy alternatives, okay? That's a lot to bite off. I think the other mandate that's coming down, okay, that maybe is going to be constraining our ability to even, find developers to come in here and build that kind of quantity, is this whole thing about vehicle miles traveled. This new mandate that came down, and actually, first heard about it during the Surfliner draft EIR meeting about a new way that the state is really mandating what's important in the transportation Appendix G document. And when you look at that, okay, especially in light of the first objective in the circulation, C1, reduce transportation-related fossil fuel consumption, greenhouse gases, harmful air pollutants, and this new vehicle miles travel. That seems to be going to be a new ordinance or something in our municipal code, okay, to try to track all this stuff. And that's a brand new policy that's in the general plan. And, you know, I did my AI Google stuff and all that things, and I just want to share with everybody, when you talk about the policies, okay, you're going to have mixed use, which we already have here in Carp, on Carp Avenue right now, and we already anticipated some of that in the housing element, okay, by rezoning some property. But you're going to have to put all new growth along existing transit corridors. That's a policy. Okay, so if the general plan has 1,200 units up in the industrial park, I'm not sure if that's already along a transit route. This concept of multimodal transportation system, that's an interesting one. It's basically trying to get people out of vehicles. And right now, predominantly gas-powered. But if the electric industry, the EV cars, the vehicles will be all electric and no greenhouse gases. So I don't know whether that's going to change the state policy or not. And so a lot of this is I guess another train of thought here. A lot of what's in here, in the sense of policies and implementation objectives under the circulation one, is really out of totally the city authority. We have to work with all the other transit areas. One thing I can't wrap my head around is some of the policies and implementation strategy is remote working opportunities, employee carpools, compressed work week opportunities. That's in our general plan. That's something that our city, and I'm just questioning, is that going to be another department within the city now tracking VMT? I just don't, and that's a mandated state. And we just fell in line. We fell in line, okay? Now, this is a great document, but when I did my AI Genesis, okay, it came back with the same buzzwords and the same things that are in this document. So my real question from a policy point of view, okay, I know from the public side of it, because this is the first time I'm sort of getting my hands wrapped around this update and the implications to Carpinteria. So, think about the current population is 12,000 and change. If you build out to 9,647 units, 2.53 people in a housing unit, that's 23, 24, 25,000 people here. Are we going to have another supermarket here? Are we going to widen Carp Avenue? I just don't understand this, and I'm not sure if there is an answer. I don't expect to have an answer. But this magnitude of change that this is supporting, on one hand, it's supporting it, but on the other hand, I don't see how we could implement it. You know, assuming we find developers that are willing to come here, you know, and then we go back to the community goal to preserve the essential character of a small beach town. I've been here 10 years, okay, and you know, it's a small beach town. So again, I'm just trying to process this all, okay? And I know, you had a mandate to do a general plan. I'm just questioning some of the policy statements in the general plan. And I'm questioning why objective C1 has to do with fossil fuels and all that. I mean, you know, there's objectives in the circulation that you could put, more walkways, more bike paths, class 2 and all that stuff. We could do a lot of stuff ourselves here in town. But I just don't understand why we have to have this PC thing about fossil fuel consumption. And my real question, my immediate question is, if the state has a 2035, you can't buy any gas cars anymore, I think. I still think that's a statute of law there. So what happens when everything is electronic vehicles? You know, CARP does not have a hospital, does not have major big box stores. The assumption that somebody's going to bike and walk to their neighborhood grocery store and come back with their weekly groceries, that whole multi-module stuff, that's for a planned city. If we're going to go out into the middle of the desert and plan a city, you could do that. I just think you all, the staff, you're setting yourself up for, here's the expectation, but I don't see anything really coming out of that. The funding is going to be an issue at every level of government. Federal, state, the document talks about all the funding sources. It's going to be an issue every level here, and we're not the only municipality who's going to have to try to deal with the next 20 years, who have the same state mandates coming down. So I think I made sort of all my points. I'm around policy alternatives. And somehow, I believe the current council needs to understand this. Somebody, I think it was Mr. Pratt. Policy, okay, general plan. Let's talk about the policy stuff here. Okay, that we want our general plan to support 10,000 units, residential units. That's a strategic plan. That's a strategic goal. I didn't have time to look at a strategic plan to see how this reconciles the strategic plan. God bless everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to go next? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
Before we do, I thought maybe this is a good opportunity, Alan, to kind of highlight part of what we're looking for in terms of feedback to alternatives in the general plan, right? So part of what we did with the build-out scenario is looked at an absolute worst-case scenario, right? I don't think we expect that we will approve capacity for 4,000 plus new units, but we need to evaluate the worst-case scenarios so that we understand all the different manifestations of where new residential development could occur. And then what we're looking for from the community, right, is feedback on, hey, we don't think this area is appropriate. Maybe it should stay agriculture, or this area should go open space, or what have you, right? So we're starting at that worst case scenario, and through these evaluation of alternatives and feedback, we expect we'll end up at some whittled down version of what's currently proposed.
So okay, that was my one policy alternative. The other one is related to, taking the VMT
and so
Kool-Aid.
Some of that is a state mandate, so it's something that all jurisdictions have to help plan and work towards. Obviously, some of those things aren't going to fit here the same as they would fit in a bigger city, but there is an expectation that all jurisdictions make inroads towards reducing vehicle miles traveled.
Right.
And some of that can be through things, like you said, of trying to focus new residential development near transportation corridors. And if you look at our housing element, for example, we've already tried to do that by focusing rezoned sites along Carpinteria Avenue or along Via Real where the bus route is, so that you're within walking distance of the bus. That's an example
Yeah.
of what might be like a VMT
Right.
strategy.
Yeah, but also, focusing on what we currently need to focus on is the conditions of our streets, improvements, maintenance, and a result of that, putting in more C2 bike lanes and sidewalks, walks, and so forth.
Yeah, they're not meant to be
I mean,
mutually exclusive.
There's a lot
We're
that
trying to
we could
achieve
do
all of them.
on our own, but I don't know. It's just I don't have editorial comment, but that C1 thing just jumped out at me, and I think you could get rid of that and talk about the things that you're talking about within the other circulation goals, because they're appropriate. But fossil fuels, let's not get into a sable conversation. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
All right, one more time, anybody who hasn't spoken who still would like to speak? I'm not seeing any hands in the audience. How about on Zoom, Megan?
Anyone on Zoom like to make a comment? I am not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, Amrita, did you want to come on up?
I have two questions. One, how will the city deal with the urban-rural boundaries considering what happened with the Red Tail project? In other words, the people who are going to be moving into that complex will be using facilities in Carpinteria. I mean, they're right on the boundary. So how will the city maintain an urban-rural boundary when the county has disregarded it? That's the first question. And the second question is, I was wondering, is there a way that land use or the land use maps in any way indicate the density that's allowed? Is there a connection between that? And if I recall, at the last meeting that was at the library, whatever that meeting was called, I forgot what it was called, there was a lot of discussion about open space and keeping Carpinteria open. And I'm not sure if that has been included in the revisions or the updated general plan.
Great questions. Let me start with the last part first.
Okay.
A little easier for me. So at the community workshop, there was a lot of concerns about, for instance, the parcels on the bluffs and showing them as PUD designations so that they could support future development. And that is something that we want to take very seriously in the alternatives, as far as showing a range of alternatives that would have lesser potential development on those sites. And this got discussed heavily also at the general plan update committee meetings, and ultimately they agreed that the proposed project, which again is the reasonable worst case scenario, does show development going there so that it's analyzed. And then what can ultimately go forward is we can look at all the alternatives, and the decision makers will be able to, with all the community input, decide and have a range to choose from. They could either choose, yes, allow full development there, allow no development there, or something in between, but at least it's completely analyzed in the EIR. And so that's really important so that they have choices from which to choose. Because if it's not analyzed in the EIR, then we'd have to go back and do the environmental analysis. So we want to make sure everything is analyzed that they can choose from. as far as indicating the density on the maps, there should be a range of densities given for each land use designation. So while it may not be the exact zoning decided as of yet, each of those designations shown on the map, if you go into the land use element, they indicate what the range of potential densities are. And so when we do the EIR, we're going to be analyzing whatever's the upper part of that range as the potential impacts.
Yeah, it's table LU-2.
Pardon?
Table LU-2
Okay, thank you.
on page 22, or PDF page 10, it looks like, shows those densities for each of those land use categories.
And then finally, with the housing up zones that have occurred outside our boundary, that is going to have to be considered in our cumulative impacts analysis. So we will definitely be counting those as cumulative projects for us to consider as we analyze. We certainly are concerned about how those projects will affect facilities and infrastructure in the city. And so you will see us talking about that in the cumulative discussion of the EIR.
Will projects, I know this EIR is a program EIR, as you've said several times, but will projects that are presently having been submitted to the city, will they be included in this PEIR so that you can see the cumulative effects of density as well as,
Yes.
other effects?
That's another wonderful question. Most projects that are in-house already as applications being processed, most of them will actually be considered part of our project because a lot of them are consistent with what we're showing on our map. So we can still analyze it all, but call it part of the project because they're not going above what we are already analyzing. Now, if there's something that's in process that is not clearly part of the project or it's more intensive than what we're analyzing, then it will count as a cumulative project.
Will count as a what
A
project?
cumulative project, yeah. So we will try to capture everything either through the proposed project or through cumulative analysis.
And that includes projects that may have a lot of inconsistencies within the general plan or municipal code.
Theoretically,
Is that correct?
yes. If there's inconsistencies, we want to try and capture that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, that was the last person who raised their hand, so I guess at this point I'm going to do a final call, last call. If anyone has a question or concern or comment, this is your chance. And of course, there's the comment period is still going till June 5th, so you're welcome to email us, write in comments. Megan, is there anyone on Zoom who wants to raise their hand?
Not seeing any raised hands. Last call, Zoom commenters, anyone?
All right, we're on our final slide. Comments due by June 5th. Don't forget to use that GP update email or mail it here to the City Hall address. Subscribe to our email newsletter to get updates. And check out our full project website for where all the draft elements are and the NOP and any other updates about the project. And thank you all so much for participating. This was really helpful to us. Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 6:45.